Close your eyes and imagine looking up at the night sky with no knowledge of when to plant crops, when winter will arrive, when to expect the full moon. Tonight, we journey through humanity's remarkable quest to organize time itself, to create order from the celestial chaos, to predict the future by understanding the patterns of sun, moon, and stars, from scratches on ancient bones to the smartphones in our pockets. Let the story of the calendar, that most fundamental human invention, carry you gently into sleep. Our story begins not with any calendar, but with the problem calendars solve. Time is relentless, flowing forward without pause, and humans desperately needed to understand its patterns. Imagine being an early human, perhaps 30,000 years ago, watching the moon change shape night after night. The moon waxes from invisible new moon to glowing full moon, then wanes back to darkness, over and over, in a rhythm taking about 29.5 days. This cycle is obvious to anyone who watches the sky, and archaeological evidence suggests humans tracked lunar phases incredibly early in our history. A bone found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, dated to around 20,000 BCE, has notches carved in groups that some researchers believe represent moon phases, our oldest possible calendar, though others dispute this interpretation. Similar notched bones and cave markings found across Europe and Africa might be tally marks, artistic decoration, or lunar calendars. We can't know for certain, but the impulse to mark and track time seems deeply human, emerging long before writing or agriculture. The sun's cycle is even more fundamental: day and night, the most basic rhythm of existence. But the solar year is harder to track precisely than the lunar month. You can't directly observe when one year ends and another begins. You must watch for subtle changes in the sun's position at sunrise or sunset, track shadows cast by fixed objects at noon, or notice which stars appear at dawn and dusk. Ancient peoples developed various methods. At Newgrange in Ireland, a passage tomb built around 3200 BCE, the winter solstice sunrise shines directly down a long passage to illuminate the inner chamber, demonstrating sophisticated astronomical knowledge. Stonehenge in England, built in stages from 3000 to 2000 BCE, aligns with summer solstice sunrise and winter solstice sunset, suggesting it functioned partly as an astronomical observatory and calendar. Similar megalithic structures worldwide, from Karnak in France to Nabta Playa in Egypt, show that Neolithic peoples tracked solar cycles with remarkable precision, probably to determine the right times for planting and harvesting, to predict seasonal changes, and possibly for religious purposes. The fundamental problem that would plague calendar makers for millennia is this: the lunar month and solar year don't align neatly. A lunar month is approximately 29.53 days, while a solar year, the time for Earth to complete one orbit of the Sun, is approximately 365.24 days. 12 lunar months total only about 354 days, meaning a purely lunar calendar falls behind the solar year by 11 days annually, drifting through the seasons over time. A purely solar calendar ignores the moon, which many cultures found unacceptable since the moon's phases were important for religious observances, navigation, and marking time within months. Reconciling these two cycles, creating a lunisolar calendar that tracked both moon and seasons, became one of humanity's great mathematical challenges, solved different ways by different cultures. The ancient Sumerians in Mesopotamia, around 3000 BCE, developed one of the earliest recorded calendars, a lunisolar system with 12 lunar months named for agricultural activities and religious festivals. The Sumerian year began in spring, and months started with the new moon, the moment when the moon disappeared from the sky before reappearing as a slender crescent. But 12 lunar months meant only 354 days. So periodically, when they noticed the seasons drifting too far from the calendar, they inserted an extra month, a 13th month, to bring things back into alignment. This insertion was irregular, decided by priests or kings based on observation, making it difficult to predict years in advance. The Babylonians, who succeeded the Sumerians, refined this system, eventually developing a 19-year cycle called the Metonic cycle around 500 BCE. They discovered that 19 solar years equal almost exactly 235 lunar months, meaning if you add 7 extra months during 19 years in years 3, 6, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 19 of the cycle, the lunar and solar calendars stay synchronized. This mathematical breakthrough allowed predictable, regular calendar calculation rather than depending on continuous observation. Ancient Egypt took a different approach, developing a solar calendar around 3000 BCE that largely ignored the moon. The Egyptian calendar had 12 months of exactly 30 days each, divided into 3 seasons based on the Nile cycle: Akit, flooding; Perit, growing; and Shemu, harvest. At year's end, they added 5 extra days called epigonal days, bringing the total to 365 days. These 5 days were considered outside normal time, a dangerous period when the boundary between order and chaos weakened, requiring special religious observances. The Egyptian calendar's genius was its simplicity, every year identical in structure, easy to calculate and plan with. But it had a fatal flaw. The solar year is actually 365.24 days, not 365, meaning the Egyptian calendar lost a day every 4 years. Over centuries, the calendar drifted through the seasons, taking 460 years to return to its starting point. The Egyptians knew about this drift. Ptolemy Roman III attempted to introduce a leap year in 238 BCE, but cultural conservatism kept the old 365-day calendar in use for civil purposes, while priests used astronomical observations to determine the true solar year for religious ceremonies. The Egyptian calendar's clean, simple structure would influence later calendar development, particularly the Roman calendar. The ancient Chinese calendar, developed during the Shang dynasty around 1600 BCE or earlier, was sophisticated and complex, combining lunar months with solar seasons. The Chinese calendar is lunisolar, with months beginning at each new moon, but it also tracks the solar year through the 24 solar terms, points marking the sun's position in its annual cycle, including the solstices, equinoxes, and 20 other divisions. These solar terms indicated the proper times for agricultural activities, regardless of which lunar month they fell in. A standard year had 12 lunar months, but when the calendar drifted too far from the solar year, an intercalary or leap month was inserted. The rule eventually developed: if a lunar month contains no major solar term, it becomes a leap month. This system kept the calendar aligned with seasons while still beginning months with the new moon. The Chinese calendar also cycles through 60-year periods, combining 10 heavenly stems with 12 earthly branches associated with the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac, creating a sexagenary cycle. Each year, month, day, and even hour can be described using this system. The Chinese calendar influenced calendars throughout East Asia. Japan, Korea, and Vietnam all used variations of it, despite China adopting the Gregorian calendar for civil purposes in 1912. The traditional calendar remains in use for cultural and religious purposes, with festivals like Chinese New Year, the Mid-Autumn Festival, and others determined by the lunar calendar. The ancient Hebrew calendar, described in the Bible and refined by Babylonian astronomical knowledge during the Jewish exile, is lunisolar, like the Chinese system. Months begin with the new moon, and years normally have 12 months, but 7 times in every 19 years. A 13th month, Adar Roman II, is added to keep Passover in spring. The Bible specifies that Passover must occur in the month of Aviv, when barley ripens, creating a requirement to keep the calendar aligned with agricultural seasons. The detailed rules for the Hebrew calendar were codified by Hillel Roman II in 358 CE, creating a fixed mathematical system that didn't require astronomical observation or rabbinic authority to determine. The calculation is complex. Years are classified as either deficient, 353, or 383 days, regular, 354 or 384 days, or complete, 355 or 385 days, with the variation accommodating rules about when certain holy days can fall. For example, Yom Kippur cannot fall immediately before or after the Sabbath, Saturday, for practical reasons, so the calendar adjusts month lengths slightly to prevent this. The Hebrew calendar counts years from the creation of the world as calculated by Jewish tradition. The year 2025 CE is the year 5785 in the Hebrew calendar. This dating system was established in the Talmudic period and reflects biblical genealogies and calculations rather than historical evidence. The ancient Greeks had a mess of calendars because Greece wasn't a unified nation but a collection of independent city-states, each with its own calendar. Athens used a lunisolar calendar with months named for religious festivals, beginning the year with the first new moon after the summer solstice. Sparta had different months and a different year start. Delphi, Corinth, Thebes all had their own systems. Even within cities, multiple calendars might coexist. A religious calendar based on the moon, a civil calendar for political purposes, and an agricultural calendar following the sun. The philosopher Meton of Athens developed a 19-year lunisolar cycle around 432 BCE, similar to the Babylonian cycle, though possibly developed independently. But Athens didn't fully adopt it, relying instead on officials called archons who could insert extra months irregularly. This chaos made it difficult to date events across Greek cities, and historians still struggle to correlate dates in ancient Greek sources with our calendar. The Greeks did contribute the concept of the Olympiad, the 4-year period between Olympic Games, which provided a pan-Hellenic dating system. Historians would date events as occurring in the first, second, third, or fourth year of a particular Olympiad, allowing correlation across different cities' calendars. The Roman calendar, according to tradition, was established by Romulus, Rome's legendary founder, around 753 BCE. This early calendar had 10 months totaling 304 days, beginning in March and ending in December. Yes, December was the 10th month. Its name comes from decem, Latin for 10, just as September, October, and November come from septem, 7, octo, 8, and novum, 9. Winter was apparently an unassigned, uncounted period between December and March, which obviously created problems. The second king, Numa Pompilius, supposedly added January and February, bringing the year to 12 months and 355 days. January came first, named for Janus. The two faced god of beginnings and transitions. But for centuries, March remained the beginning of the official year for many purposes, which is why our month names are off by 2 September through December, are the 9th through 12th months, not the 7th through 10th. The Roman calendar was lunar but frequently manipulated. Officials, called pontifices, could insert extra months, called intercalary months, to keep the calendar aligned with seasons, but they often did so for political reasons, extending their own terms or shortening enemies' terms, creating chaos. By Julius Caesar's time, the calendar was months out of sync with the seasons. Julius Caesar, with the help of the Alexandrian astronomer Sophistication, reformed the Roman calendar in 46 BCE, creating what we call the Julian calendar. This reform was radical. Abandon the moon. Make a purely solar calendar with 365 days. Add a leap year every 4 years to account for the extra quarter day, and standardize month lengths to bring the old calendar back into alignment with the seasons. 46 BCE had to be 445 days long, called the Year of Confusion by Macrobius, though technically it was the year designed to end confusion. The new system, implemented in 45 BCE, gave us essentially the calendar structure we still use. 12 months with the lengths we know. The leap year system, adding February 29th every 4 years, and January 1st as the year's beginning, which Caesar officially established, though it had been celebrated before. The Julian calendar spread throughout the Roman Empire and was nearly correct. Its average year of 365.25 days differs from the true solar year by only 11 minutes. But those 11 minutes accumulate over centuries, creating the problem that would eventually require another reform. The Julian calendar was a Roman achievement, but by the time it spread widely, the Roman Empire had become Christian, and Christian authorities needed the calendar for determining Easter's date. Easter was supposed to fall on the Sunday following the first full moon after the spring equinox, commemorating Christ's resurrection. This definition connected Easter to both lunar, full moon, and solar, equinox, cycles, requiring astronomical knowledge to calculate. Early Christians disagreed about Easter's date, with different regions celebrating on different days. The Council of Nicaea in 325 CE standardized Easter calculation, specifying it should follow the spring equinox on March 21st. But as centuries passed, the Julian calendar's slight inaccuracy, those extra 11 minutes per year, meant the calendar was slowly drifting later relative to the solar year. By the 16th century, the spring equinox was occurring around March 11th rather than March 21st, 10 days earlier than at Nicaea, threatening the whole system of Easter calculation. The Catholic Church needed reform. Pope Gregory, Roman 13, urged by religious and scientific authorities, including the Jesuit mathematician Christopher Clavius and physician Luigi Lilio, who died before the reform was implemented, announced a new calendar in 1582. The Gregorian calendar made 2 changes. First, to fix the accumulated drift, 10 days were simply dropped. October 4, 1582 was followed by October 15, 1582. Nothing happened during those missing days. They didn't exist. People went to sleep on October 4th and woke up on October 15th, though presumably most people weren't paying enough attention to notice. Second, the leap year rule was modified. Instead of every year divisible by 4 being a leap year, century years, years ending in 00, would only be leap years if divisible by 400. So 1600 was a leap year, but 1700, 1800, and 1900 were not, while 2000 was. This modification brought the average year to 365.2425 days, incredibly close to the true solar year of 365.2422 days, a difference of only about 26 seconds per year, meaning the Gregorian calendar won't need adjustment for over 3,000 years. The Gregorian calendar's adoption was neither immediate nor universal. Catholic countries, Spain, Portugal, Poland, Italy, and Catholic German states adopted it quickly in 1582. But Protestant countries viewed it as a papist plot, refusing to accept a calendar imposed by Rome. Britain and its colonies, including America, didn't switch until 1752, by which time 11 days needed to be dropped. More drift had accumulated. Many people believed they were being robbed of 11 days of their lives and rioted with the slogan, "Give us our 11 days back." In Sweden, the attempted gradual transition from 1700 to 1740 by skipping leap years failed spectacularly, creating a unique Swedish calendar that matched no one else's, forcing them to add back the skipped days and then switch to Gregorian all at once in 1753. Eastern Orthodox countries held out even longer. Russia didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until 1918, after the Bolshevik Revolution, which is why the October Revolution of 1917 occurred in November by the Gregorian calendar. Greece waited until 1923. Even today, some Orthodox churches use the Julian calendar for religious purposes, which is why Orthodox Christmas falls on January 7th Gregorian, that's December 25th Julian. Now 13 days behind, the Gregorian calendar has become the de facto international standard for civil purposes, used in business, diplomacy, and daily life worldwide. But its adoption was a centuries-long struggle against religious, political, and cultural resistance. While Europeans argued over the Gregorian calendar, other civilizations had their own sophisticated systems. The Mayan calendar, developed by around 2000 BCE and refined over millennia, was actually several interlocking calendars used simultaneously. The Tzolk'in, or sacred calendar, had 260 days, combining 13 numbers with 20-day names in a repeating cycle, used for religious purposes and determining auspicious days for various activities. The Harb, or civil calendar, had 365 days divided into 18 months of 20 days, each plus 5 extra nameless days, considered unlucky. The Tzolk'in and Harb synchronized every 52 Harb years. The calendar round, a significant cycle marked by ceremonies. For longer time spans, the Maya used the long count, which counted days from a mythical creation date. The long count used a base 20 system with modifications. 20 kin days made a unal, 18 unals made a ton, 360 days, 20 tons made a katon, and 20 katons made a bakton. A long count date might be written as 13.0.0.0.0, representing baktons, katons, tons, unals, and kin, the Mayan mythical creation date. When this count began, corresponds to August 11, 3114 BCE in our calendar. The famous 2012 Mayan apocalypse was based on the long count, completing 13 baktons, about 125 years, on December 21, 2012. But this was simply the end of one cycle and beginning of another, not a predicted apocalypse that was sensationalist misinterpretation. The Maya also tracked Venus cycles with remarkable accuracy, creating tables predicting its appearances that were correct to within hours over centuries. Mayan astronomy and mathematics, including the independent invention of zero, were among the most sophisticated in the ancient world. The Aztec calendar, influenced by earlier Mesoamerican traditions, including the Maya, similarly used multiple simultaneous calendars. The tonal pohuali was a 260-day sacred calendar used for divination and determining auspicious days. The Zu Pohuali was a 365-day solar calendar with 18 months of 20 days plus 5 unlucky days. Like the Maya, the Aztecs marked the 52-year calendar round with great ceremony, including the new fire ceremony when all fires were extinguished and a new fire lit on a sacrificial victim's chest, then distributed to relight fires throughout the empire, symbolizing the world's renewal and the sun's continuation. The Aztecs believed the world had been created and destroyed 4 times before, and their current world, the fifth sun, would eventually end in earthquakes. The massive sun stone, sometimes called the Aztec calendar stone, though it's not strictly a calendar, carved in the 15th century and weighing over 24 tons, depicts the 5 worlds and the calendar system in intricate detail. The Islamic calendar, established during the Prophet Muhammad's lifetime in the 7th century, is purely lunar with 12 months totaling 354 or 355 days. Months begin with the first sighting of the new moon's crescent, making the exact date unpredictable until the moon is observed. The Islamic year is shorter than the solar year by about 11 days, meaning Islamic months drift through the seasons, taking about 33 years to cycle through all seasons and return to the same season. This means Ramadan, the month of fasting, occurs during different seasons over a person's lifetime, sometimes in summer with long, hot days, sometimes in winter with short days. The Islamic calendar dates from the Hijra, Muhammad's migration from Mecca to Medina in 622 CE, making that year 1 AH. Anno Hejri, the purely lunar system, reflects the calendar's religious purpose. It's designed for marking religious observances, particularly the start of Ramadan and the timing of the Hajj pilgrimage, both determined by the moon. For practical civil purposes, many Islamic countries use the Gregorian calendar alongside the Islamic calendar. The dependence on actual moon sighting rather than calculation sometimes creates interesting situations where different countries or regions start the month on different days because the moon was visible in one place but not another, leading to ongoing debates about whether calculation should replace observation. The Baha'i calendar, created by the Bab, founder of the Baha'i faith and forerunner to Baha'u'llah, who founded the Baha'i faith, is a solar calendar with 19 months of 19 days each, 361 days, plus 4 or 5 intercalary days before the last month, bringing the total to 365 or 366 days. Months and days are named after divine attributes in Arabic. Years are counted from the spring equinox of 1844, when the Bab announced his mission, and years are grouped into cycles of 19 years, called V R letter 1825 IDS, with 19 V R letter 1825 IDS forming a Kul I Shay, 361 years. The calendar begins on the spring equinox, around March 2021, connecting it to nature's renewal. The Baha'i calendar reflects the religion's emphasis on unity and symbolism. 19 is significant in Baha'i numerology, and its structure is radically different from any other calendar. Though in practice, Baha'is also use the Gregorian calendar for civil purposes. Various calendar reform proposals have emerged over the past few centuries, attempting to improve the calendar's regularity and eliminate its quirks. The Gregorian calendar, for all its astronomical accuracy, has irritating irregularities, months of different lengths for no astronomical reason, holidays falling on different days of the week each year, and quarters of unequal length, making financial calculations annoying. The international fixed calendar, proposed in the early 20th century, would have 13 months of exactly 28 days each, 364 days, plus 1 or 2 extra days outside the month system, Each month would be identical for complete 7-day weeks, meaning any date would always fall on the same day of the week. July 15th would always be, say, Wednesday. The 365th day would be Year Day, a holiday between the last day of one year and the first day of the next, and leap year would add a second, Year Day. This calendar was seriously considered by the League of Nations in the 1930 and was used by Kodak Corporation internally from 1928 to 1989. But it faced religious objections. The extra days outside the weekly cycle broke the continuous 7-day week that had been maintained since ancient times, and both Jews and Seventh-day Adventists objected because their Sabbath observance depended on the unbroken weekly cycle. The world calendar, proposed in 1930, tried to solve similar problems differently. It had 4 quarters of exactly 13 weeks each, with months of 31, 30 days. December 31st would be World's Day, outside the week, and leap years would add Leap Year Day after June 30th. This kept quarters equal and predictable, but still broke the continuous week, facing the same religious objections. The United Nations considered it in the 1950, but religious groups' opposition killed it. Other proposals included the Pax calendar with 13 months, the Hank Henry permanent calendar maintaining the 12-month system but rearranging it for regularity, and various perpetual calendar schemes. None succeeded because the Gregorian calendar, despite its flaws, is entrenched. Changing it would require coordinating the entire world, adjusting countless computer systems and documents, overcoming religious objections, and convincing people to learn a new system that, while more logical, wouldn't fundamentally work better for most purposes. The switching costs vastly exceed the benefits, so the Gregorian calendar persists. The French revolutionary calendar, implemented from 1793 to 1805, was one of history's most radical but short-lived calendar reforms. The French Revolution sought to break with the past and create a new society based on reason, and this extended to time itself. The new calendar abandoned Christian-era dating, making year I begin with the establishment of the French Republic on September 22, 1792. The autumn equinox. The year had 12 months of 30 days each, with 5 or 6 jours complémentaires, complementary days. At year's end, months were given poetic names relating to nature: Vendémiaire, vintage; brumaire, fog; frumaire, frost; nivos, snow; pluvios, rain; ventos, wind; germinal, seed; floreal, flower; prairial, meadow; messidor, harvest; thermidor, heat; and fructidor, fruit. Each month had 3 weeks called decades, each 10 days long, replacing the 7-day week. The 10th day, decadi, was the rest day, replacing Sunday. Days were divided into 10 hours of 100 minutes each, with 100 seconds per minute, complete decimalization of time. This sounds mathematically elegant, but was wildly impractical. Workers hated getting only 1 day off in 10 instead of 1 in 7, and the new time units didn't correspond to anything natural or useful. Napoleon ended this experiment in 1805, returning to the Gregorian calendar. The revolutionary calendar is remembered mainly as an example of reason and idealism taken to absurd extremes, attempting to reform something so fundamental to daily life that people couldn't adjust, no matter how logical the changes seemed on paper. The Soviet Union made its own calendar experiments after the Bolshevik Revolution, from 1929 to 1931. They implemented a 5-day week with workers assigned to different rest days, keeping factories running continuously without closures. Then, from 1931 to 1940, they tried a 6-day week. The goal was increasing productivity by eliminating the 7-day week, which had religious, Sabbath, associations, and ensuring continuous production. But it failed spectacularly. Workers whose rest days didn't align couldn't socialize or share family time. Animals didn't adapt well to irregular feeding and milking schedules, and productivity actually decreased due to worker exhaustion and poor morale. The traditional 7-day week was restored in 1940, though the Soviets kept Sunday as a workday with a different day off, trying to maintain distance from Christian practices. In Ethiopia, a unique calendar system persists today, based on the ancient Coptic calendar, which descended from the Egyptian calendar. The Ethiopian calendar has 12 months of 30 days, each plus a 13th month of 5 or 6 days. Their year begins on what is August 29th or September 11th in the Gregorian calendar, depending on whether it's the year before or after a Gregorian leap year. Most strikingly, the Ethiopian calendar is about 7 to 8 years behind the Gregorian calendar in numbering. When writing this script in 2025 Gregorian, it's 2017 in Ethiopia. This difference arises from different calculations of Jesus Christ's birth year. When you land in Ethiopia, you travel back in time by about 8 years. Ethiopia also divides the day differently. Their day begins at sunrise, 6 a.m. Gregorian. So 1 o'clock Ethiopian time is 7 a.m. Gregorian. This can create confusion for travelers, but is perfectly logical for Ethiopians and deeply rooted in their Orthodox Christian tradition. The Persian calendar, officially used in Iran and Afghanistan, is one of the most astronomically accurate calendars in use today, based on the ancient Zoroastrian calendar, but significantly reformed in the 11th century by Omar Khayyam, better known in the West as a poet, and modernized in 1925. It has 12 months, with the first 6 months having 31 days, the next 5 having 30 days, and the last month having 29 days, 30 in leap years. Years begin on the spring equinox, determined astronomically with great precision. The leap year system is more accurate than the Gregorian rather than following a fixed mathematical rule. The Persian calendar calculates each year based on actual astronomical observations of the equinox, making it perfectly aligned with the seasons. This means you cannot calculate Persian leap years centuries in advance as you can with Gregorian leap years. You must calculate the spring equinox's exact moment for each year. The Iranian year 1 corresponds to 622 CE. The Hejra, the same starting point as the Islamic calendar, but the Persian calendar is solar, not lunar, so year numbers align roughly, but not exactly with the Islamic calendar. When most of the world is celebrating 2025, Iran celebrates 1403 or 1404, depending on the time of year. The Thai solar calendar is similar to the Gregorian in structure, 12 months with the same lengths, but year numbering is different. Thailand uses the Buddhist era, B, counting from Buddha's death, or in some reckonings, his enlightenment or birth, placing year 1, B, at 543 BCE. So 2025 C is 2568 B. Thailand switched from the Thai lunar calendar, still used for religious purposes, to this solar calendar in 1888, and from April 1st, year beginning to January 1st in 1941, aligning with international standards while maintaining cultural distinctiveness through the different era and continued use of the lunar calendar for determining Buddhist holidays. The Indian national calendar, adopted in 1957, is based on the Hindu Saka era, with year 1 corresponding to 78 CE. It's a solar calendar with 12 months and begins on March 22nd, March 21st in leap years, one day after the spring equinox. The first month, Chaitra, has 30 days, 31 in leap years. The next 5 months have 31 days each, and the last 6 have 30 days each. This calendar was designed to unify India's many regional calendars, while acknowledging the Gregorian calendar's international status. Official Indian government documents show both dates. The Saka era was chosen because it was already used in some regions and had historical significance, representing a compromise among India's many calendrical traditions. India also uses the Hindu lunar calendar for religious purposes, and different regions have their own traditional calendars, making India's temporal landscape incredibly complex, with multiple calendars coexisting for different purposes. The concept of weeks' 7-day cycles independent of months or years is ancient and widespread, but not universal. The 7-day week probably originated in ancient Mesopotamia, possibly connected to the 7 visible celestial bodies: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. The Babylonians considered the number 7 sacred. The Jewish week, with the Sabbath as the 7th day, was established in biblical times and has been maintained continuously for over 3,000 years. When Rome adopted Christianity, the 7-day week spread throughout the empire, and it eventually became nearly universal. Though some cultures had different week lengths, the ancient Romans earlier used an 8-day week called the nundinal cycle. The Mayans used both 13-day and 20-day cycles. During the French Revolution and Soviet experiments, 7-day weeks were briefly replaced, but they always returned. The continuity of the 7-day week is remarkable. It has cycled continuously without interruption, even when calendars changed. When the Gregorian calendar dropped 10 days in 1582, they went from Thursday, October 4th, to Friday, October 15th. The weekly cycle continued unbroken. Month names in English and other European languages reveal the calendar's history. January through June come from Roman gods or rulers. January for Janus, February from Febrium, purification. March for Mars, April possibly from Aphrodite or Aperia, to open. May for Maya, and June for Juno. July and August honor Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar, replacing the old names Quintiles and Sextiles. September through December are simply numbered, 7th through 10th months, though they are now the 9th through 12th because of January and February's later addition. Various rulers tried renaming months after themselves. Emperor Commodus briefly renamed all 12 months after his titles, but only Julius and Augustus stuck. The Republican era numbers for September-December survived every attempt to change them, showing how resistant language is to reform even when the logic has become nonsensical. Day names in English come from Norse and Roman gods. Sunday for the sun, Monday for the moon, Tuesday for Tyr, Wednesday for Woden, Odin, Thursday for Thor, Friday for Frigg, or Freya, and Saturday for Saturn. Romance languages kept more direct Roman god references. In Spanish, for instance, lunes, Monday, comes from luna, moon, Mars, Tuesday, from Mars, miércoles, Wednesday, from Mercury, Juves, Thursday, from Jupiter, Vians, Friday, from Venus. These naming patterns reflect cultural contact, religious influence, and linguistic evolution, carrying ancient beliefs into our daily vocabulary. Calendar quirks persist in modern life. February still has 28 or 29 days, while other months have 30, 31. Distributed irregularly. The rhyme: 30 days hath September, April, June, and November. Helps remember. But why these particular months have these particular lengths has more to do with political decisions. August was lengthened to match July's 31 days, so Augustus Caesar's month matched Julius Caesar's, than any astronomical or logical reason. Leap year adds a day to the calendar's shortest month, rather than creating an extra monthly day. And like some reform proposals, time zones, while not strictly calendar-related, add another layer of complexity. The world is divided into zones, ideally 15 degrees of longitude wide, representing 1 hour's time difference. But political boundaries mean irregular, zigzagging zones that don't follow neat lines. The international date line, roughly following the 180-degree meridian, but deviating to keep island nations whole, is where the calendar date changes. If you cross it eastward, you repeat a day. Westward, you skip a day. When Samoa decided to switch from the American to the Asian side of the date line in 2011 to better align business hours with trading partners. December 29, 2011 was followed immediately by December 31. 2011 December 30th simply didn't exist that year in Samoa. The date line is arbitrary, a human convention necessary because the Earth is round, and we must designate somewhere as the place where calendar dates change. But it can create odd situations, like Kiribati spanning 3 calendar days simultaneously. The Y2K computer bug highlighted modern dependence on calendars and timekeeping. Many computer systems represented years with only 2 digits to save memory. Assuming 19 prefix when 2000 arrived, would computers interpret 00 as 1900? Massive efforts updated systems to prevent failures in power grids, banking, aviation, and countless other computerized systems. The feared catastrophic failures didn't occur, partly because the problem was taken seriously and addressed, leading to debates about whether it was overblown or whether the preparations justified themselves. The Y2K38 problem looms. Many systems represent time as seconds since January 1, 1970, using 32-bit integers that will max out on January 19, 2038, potentially causing similar failures. Solutions are already being implemented, but it shows that calendars and timekeeping, seemingly simple concepts, become complex when implemented in technology systems requiring precision and consistency. Digital calendars have transformed how we interact with time. Before computers and smartphones, you needed a physical calendar, and coordinating schedules meant phone calls or face-to-face meetings. Now, digital calendars sync across devices, send reminders, integrate with email and messaging, and allow sharing and coordination across the globe instantly. Time zones are automatically calculated, holidays can be shown or hidden, and appointments can be color-coded and categorized. Yet this convenience masks the underlying complexity. The algorithms calculating these calendars must account for leap years, daylight saving time changes, which vary by country and change unpredictably as governments modify rules. Different week starts, Sunday vs. Monday, various calendar systems for different cultures, and historical calendar changes. A digital calendar showing a date in 1582 must know whether the user wants the Julian or Gregorian date. Microsoft Outlook, Google Calendar, and Apple Calendar all contain thousands of lines of code just handling calendar calculations and cultural variations. Daylight saving time itself is a calendar-adjacent headache, not part of the calendar, but affecting how we track time. First proposed by Benjamin Franklin jokingly, and later seriously advocated by New Zealander George Hudson and Englishman William Willett. DSD was first implemented during World War I to conserve fuel. The idea was that shifting clocks forward in summer would better align waking hours with daylight, reducing need for artificial lighting. Various countries have adopted, abandoned, re-adopted, and modified DSD over the past century. In the United States, DSD observance was chaotic until standardized in 1966. But even now, some states, Arizona and Hawaii, don't observe it, and Indiana didn't adopt it statewide until 2006. Europe coordinates DSD across the EU, but individual countries debate its usefulness. Studies on whether DSD actually saves energy or improves outcomes are inconclusive and contested. The twice-yearly time change has been linked to increased car accidents, heart attacks, and workplace injuries in the days following the shift, leading to growing calls to abolish it. Some propose permanent standard time, others permanent daylight saving time. But achieving consensus is difficult because the best time depends on latitude, lifestyle, and personal preference. The semi-annual ritual of spring forward, fall back continues in many places, a calendar quirk that affects billions. The concept of year zero reveals interesting mathematical and historical issues. In the Gregorian calendar, year 1 CE follows immediately after year 1 BCE. There's no year zero. This system, established by Dionysius Exiguus in 525 CE, when he calculated Anno Domini dating, reflected Roman numerals which had no zero. This creates confusion. The 1st century CE ran from year 1 to year 100. The 2nd century from 101 to 200, meaning the 21st century began in 2001, not 2000, though most people celebrated the new millennium on January 1, 2000. Astronomers and International Standard ISO 8601 use a year 0 corresponds to 1 BCE, year 1 to 2 BCE, etc., making mathematical calculations easier, but confusing anyone using the traditional system. This zero/no zero difference can trip up historical dates. An event in year 500, astronomical, is year 501 BCE. Historical, it's a small detail with implications for how we think about time and continuity. The Holocene calendar, proposed in 1993 by scientist Cesare Emiliani, suggests adding 10,000 years to the current CE dating, making 2025 CE become 12,025 He. Holocene era, the starting point, 10,000 BCE, approximates when human civilization began with agriculture, providing a human era calendar that doesn't reference any particular religion and gives a positive year number to all of recorded history, instead of BC/BCE and AD/CE. Everything is He. The proposal has gained limited support among some scientists and transhumanists who like its secular, human-centered approach, but it hasn't achieved widespread adoption because changing year numbers would require global coordination and because the current system, despite its Christian references, is too entrenched. The Holocene calendar illustrates that calendars are cultural and political, not just technical, and changing them requires more than mathematical logic. It requires convincing billions to adjust their temporal reference point. Various organizations have proposed calendars for use beyond Earth. A Martian solar day, Sol, is about 40 minutes longer than an Earth day, and a Martian year is 687 Earth days, or 668 sols. Several Martian calendar proposals exist, typically with 24 months of varying lengths, or a decimal system dividing the year into 10 months. Mars rovers, and the few humans planning Mars missions use. Sol, numbers counting from landing day rather than months. When humans eventually establish permanent Mars settlements, they'll need to decide whether to use Earth time, maintaining connection with home, Martian time, reflecting local reality, or both simultaneously, maximizing confusion. The same issues apply to lunar bases, space stations, and potentially other worlds. Calendar design for space colonization must consider not just astronomy, but psychology. Humans evolved with Earth's day-night cycle, and disrupting circadian rhythms affects health and mood. A Martian calendar isn't just intellectual exercise, but practical necessity for humanity's future beyond Earth. The persistence of different calendar systems reveals that calendars are not merely technical tools, but cultural identity markers. Using the Hebrew, Islamic, Hindu, Chinese, or other traditional calendar alongside or instead of the Gregorian calendar asserts cultural continuity, religious identity, and resistance to complete westernization. When Iran uses the Persian calendar officially, or when Saudi Arabia uses both Islamic and Gregorian calendars, they are making statements about identity and values, not just calculating dates. Proposals for universal calendar adoption, no matter how logical, threaten this cultural distinctiveness. The Gregorian calendar's global dominance as the international standard is partly historical accident. European colonialism spread it worldwide, and partly practical necessity for global coordination in trade, travel, and communication. But dominance doesn't mean universality, and the survival of alternative calendars shows that people value connection to their cultural and religious traditions even when it complicates practical life. Calendar holidays illustrate the interplay between astronomical events, religious meaning, and cultural practice. Christmas on December 25th isn't Christ's actual birth date. The Bible doesn't specify it, but was chosen possibly to Christianize Roman winter solstice celebrations like Saturnalia and Sol Invictus. Easter's date, based on the Paschal full moon following the spring equinox, connects Christianity to Jewish Passover and to spring renewal themes found across cultures. Halloween on October 31st traces to the Celtic Samhain, marking summer's end. Thanksgiving in the U.S. falls on the fourth Thursday in November, a date set by Franklin Roosevelt in 1939, moving it forward a week from Lincoln's 1863 proclamation to lengthen the Christmas shopping season. These holidays are embedded in the calendar, providing regular punctuation to the year's flow, creating anticipation and rhythm. The commercial calendar now includes invented holidays like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Prime Day, showing that calendars continuously evolve to serve new purposes. In this case, retail sales cycles. The calendar's future may see changes driven by technology, globalization, and space exploration. Some futurists propose abandoning traditional calendars entirely for decimal time systems dividing days into 10 or 100 units, though this faces the same practical barriers that doomed French revolutionary time. Digital timekeeping might eventually untether us from calendars altogether. You just know a moment's unique timestamp, and devices would translate it into whatever format you prefer. AI assistants already handle calendar complexity invisibly, letting you say, schedule a call next Tuesday, regardless of time zones, holidays, or calendar systems. Perhaps future humans won't consciously know what day it is in any traditional sense, but will simply navigate appointment to appointment guided by technology. Or perhaps the opposite, perhaps the increasing digitization and abstraction of time will drive people to reconnect with natural time. The sun and moon cycles our ancestors followed as reaction against technological mediation, of every experience. Climate change adds urgency to debates about the calendar. As seasons shift, traditional agricultural calendars become less reliable. Spring arrives earlier. Harvest times shift. Traditional weather patterns change. Calendars developed over millennia to match specific climate patterns may require adjustment as those patterns transform. Indigenous peoples using traditional calendars tied to local environmental signs, specific birds' arrival. Certain plants blooming find those signs arriving earlier or later than expected, disrupting calendar-based planning. Modern calendars based on fixed solar or lunar calculations continue unconcerned, but the disconnect between calendar and environmental reality grows. Future calendars might need to account not just for astronomical cycles, but for shifting climate zones and changing seasonal patterns. The calendar is ultimately a human creation, an attempt to impose order on time's flow, to make the future predictable, to coordinate collective action. Every calendar system represents a different solution to universal problems: how to track both sun and moon, how to number years, where to begin the year, how to divide time into useful chunks. The diversity of solutions shows human ingenuity and adaptability, while also revealing that there's no perfect calendar, only different trade-offs. The Gregorian calendar, now the global standard, succeeded not because it's perfected has arbitrary month lengths, confusing leap year rules, and cultural baggage, but because it's accurate enough, widely adopted enough, and entrenched enough that changing it seems impossible despite various flaws. As you drift towards sleep, consider that the date today, whatever it is the product of thousands of years of observation, calculation, argument, and compromise. When you check your phone to see what day it is, you're accessing knowledge accumulated from Babylonian priests watching the moon, Egyptian farmers measuring shadows, Chinese astronomers tracking Venus, Mayan mathematicians calculating cycles, Roman emperors manipulating months, medieval monks calculating Easter, and scientists calculating Earth's orbit with unprecedented precision. The calendar on your wall or phone represents humanity's collective effort to understand time, to master it, to make it serve human purposes. It's a tool and a symbol, practical and cultural, ancient and modern all at once. Rest now, and let time flow unmeasured for a while. The calendar will be there tomorrow, dividing time into its neat compartments, telling you what day it is, whether it's a weekend or weekday, a holiday or ordinary day. But for now, sleep, and let time be simply the rhythm of your breathing, the gradual relaxation of your body, the gentle drift from waking to dreaming. The calendar can wait. Time itself cannot wait. It flows constantly forward, but your awareness of time, your measurement and tracking of it, can rest. Sleep peacefully, timeless for these hours, and wake refreshed to face whatever date tomorrow brings. The calendar will still be turning, days becoming weeks, becoming months, becoming years, as it has for millennia, as it will for millennia to come, marking humanity's journey through time.